Join Voices on 106.5 KQWZ LPFM, connecting our community through history, heritage, art, and culture. We share the stories of Highline region and its people, embracing our differences and celebrating what we share.
Hi everyone, this is Nancy from the Highline Heritage Museum and welcome back. Today, it is a different interview. Normally, I have a person right next to me to talk about who they are. But today, we're going to change things a little bit and we are going to share a story of this wonderful person. But I'm not going to spoil it. I'll let John actually share that. In the meantime, what are we doing this? Is this for us to share who is in our communities, to share the stories that makes this a beautiful place. And Highline is more than just, it is as good as the whole region, which includes White Center, Burien, SeaTac, Nomadic Park, and a little bit of Des Moines. And so once again, thank you so much for joining us today. And John, what do you think? Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, tell me who you are. Tell me who you are, and then who are we here?
I'm John Hanford, and I was longtime friend of Bruce Bickford, who was an amazing artist and grew up on Military Road in, I suppose, the heart of what's now SeaTac. We refer to it sort of, Bruce always regarded him as growing up in the Kent Valley, which he just loved walking through it, loved looking at it. So I heard a lot about that from him. I'm from Seattle.
Got it. So what about Bruce that makes him so special? What is it that not only living in the area, but he had very specific talents and light. And I know there is more than that. I mean, all of us have so many different sides of us.
Right.
So go for it.
Well, they broke the mold with my friend. I mean, times over. You hear the word unique, and we all are. And he was remarkably so, a very deep document. I mean, he had all kinds of talents and gifts. From very early on, they were manifest as even a toddler, I think. His father said he would draw just for hours, could be by himself and focus on that, which it's not difficult to imagine that didn't manifest itself in later life when he could work for years and years and years on his own without much recognition, with very little feedback and monetary reward. So, I mean, he could concentrate. And that's only trying to describe that one aspect, because it was also his imagination. He couldn't switch it off. It was on all the time.
So who is he?
He is.
Who was he? Yeah, I keep thinking of him as if he is with us, and he is with us because of his talent, his magic is here. So who is he?
Wow. He was not remotely similar to anyone I've ever known. Deeply talented, interested, fascinated by nature, and excited by possibilities of paranormal events. He had a phenomenal memory, for most things. He knew. I majored in history, but he knew more about ancient history than I could ever approach, and European history, and he was select. He had selective interests. And so he knew a lot about mythology, and I should say, an astonishing memory of films. We talked about when we first met in 1970. That was one of our points of bonding, was music and films and early television. And so he had a memory that could recall dialogue from specific scenes or camera angles, lighting, and he didn't suffer that stuff when it was below par. I mean, he would still, in conversations about things that happened all through his life, things that happened when he was very young, he would recall and you'd feel the emotions, like either he detested things, he was amused by things, he was astonished by things. So he had very vivid recollections, family life, friends, incidents, and anything. So he could recall this. So as we became friends over the years, he could drudge up stuff. It never surprised me, the stories he would come up with and what he was amused by.
So I know that you shared that love for film. Will you
Yeah.
mind sharing with us who he is in the on the movies, film career? What is he? What is he most well known for?
His,
Um,
yeah, I dare say his work with Frank Zappa, because one of our initial things we shared when I was 20, 21 years old when I met him, was an enthusiasm for Frank Zappa's music and for some other bands and musicians and composers. Anyway, so way it worked out, he went down and worked for Frank for 7 or 8 years, doing animation and drawings, but primarily animation, I think, and worked for him, and then returned to his parents' digs overlooking the Kent Valley after that. But I think that's where most people became aware of him, were fans of Frank's, and also he cultivated through that uh, a great enthusiasm from the people who specialized in animation. And so the animated world knew about him quite a bit. I found out in his later years that they had, through different channels, became aware of his work, and they were amazed by what he could do on his own. Because, like I said, he slugged it out as one artist primarily.
so it's an animation. I'm not
Oh,
educated about it.
yeah,
And
me
so
neither,
I know
really.
that I'm going to be the only one listening to this to kind of understand what
I'm sorry.
animation is
Yeah.
and then the process of it so we can actually highlight how special he was. So let's just say what is animation to you?
Okay.
And then what is his specific skill?
Right. So he did largely in his head banner years, his headline years that everybody's most familiar with. I think it was clay animation. He was using clay figures and very large scenarios or settings and scenes that he would set up. Now, he had to do frame by frame motion. And what separated Bruce from a bête noire of his, which was the Dancing Raisins or whatever that advertisement was in the 80s, I think, was that he would manipulate several images of people, uh, visual events on the screen, uh, frame by frame, so that he'd have, say, a number of warriors combating one another, or a whole battleground full of people, or a nightclub full of people, or aliens full of people, and he'd have to manipulate all of them. And he'd always have a story, or at least an unfolding story going on in his noggin. So when he was looking at it, he would adjust things. Sometimes I was enthusiastic about how he would improvise, so that he would visualize something he was working on, and he's greatly renowned for his for developments he would either plan out or would improvise on the spot, like a jazz musician or something, shaping an image, and he would have these transformations that would be endless. So he could transform, improvising, shape shifting from, say, a person into a hamburger, or a werewolf, or or something like this. So these transformations were astonishing. So even just a few seconds of Bruce's work, you could behold things like this, like just an imagination run rampant. And I never got. I tried to plumb his ideas a lot of times, and I couldn't really understand or unravel which one, what the percentage was, say, of responding immediately, or shaping, having an idea that he'd bring out in full, or if some of the ideas occurred to him as he was making the clay models do things for him. But he did portraits of people. He did, in clay and had animated them. I wish I could do him justice. Other people will and can, but the animation was, again, years of single shot, click, move, click, move, click, adjust. And he'd have all these things going on at the same time. And he would occasionally he'd have to build his own tools. Tools didn't exist for what he wanted to accomplish. Or for effects, let's say, like for having clouds moving, he'd animate, say, cotton balls or cotton he would string out to form clouds. I can't begin to do him justice. Folks will have to look his work up at the museum, I hope, and so you can see for themselves, because he's sort of beyond words. And anyway, so a lot of times there are stories happening. I didn't realize it, but I partnered with him only a few times with making music or trying to provide music for some things he shot that had no sound. He wasn't recording sound at the same time he was filming. So it was a real surprise. By 1973, I think, he brought over a bunch of his films, and we were going to supply music for them. And then he sat down, and we saw these little figures. Oftentimes he'd use something that was kind of a facsimile of himself or looked like himself. He just called him a guy or something. Anyway, so somebody being a tree or something, and lips would move. And it never occurred to me that Bruce actually had a dialogue, specific words. And so he's watching it, and we're watching the film together, and then he starts mouthing these words that were always in his head in this dialogue. So that was a shockaroo, because, there was a lot of stuff going on until it got any sound. You weren't quite sure if there was a narrative going on or any kind of, right? So it was astonishing enough just having these things visually.
In average, let's just say it for a 1 minute to 2 minute video recording, how long would that take him just to do that?
I don't know, because there'd be all this, what our friend Greg would call pre-production, right? So he'd build, say, settings for these creatures. And so how much time he put in to preparing those, I don't really know. How much time he spent writing up ideas, I don't really know. He would just call me frequently all through the years, several times a week, let's say. And he'd discuss other things, and then he'd get around to what he was working on, or I'd ask him. And then I'd hear a little bit about his preparation for things, getting specific cameras that friends helped him out assemble, I think. And so, over the years, and I'd go to his house once in a while, and it was just chock full of clay figures, and all of his works, the clay works, were stored and carefully kept after his entire life.
Yeah, well, I've been lucky enough now that I saw, I was able to see his collection at his home before he was moved. Yeah. And then recently, actually with you, I've been able to see to the storage facility where things are located.
Yeah, so he'd work things out of, he never let things, well, he would always be asking me for paper bags, particularly boxes. And as you could see there, some of those were carved out of cardboard. And like, say, a castle, literally a castle, or some, he created an Alamo for me, because we grew up watching Davy Crockett. So the Alamo was the romance of that in Disney films. So he built me a couple of models of the Alamo because I kept talking about it with him.
It's amazing that, like I say, I'm very ignorant when it comes to what it takes to do an animation and all the different moves. But if I wanted to replay them myself, let's just say weaving with a doll, not with clay, just a doll, just moving steps. I can see why it would take such a long time in doing it. got several questions, but I want to make sure that we do have time to address them all. And so I guess, and I'm going to ask the three questions so you can select whatever direction you want to take it.
Okay.
Number one would be like, how many estimated pieces do you think he has on storage right now? Exactly. Number two, why? Why would he be doing this? What was such a strong passion for him to do this? And then three, like what is the lessons that he want? Because I'm sure he left many lessons behind with you, but what is one lesson that he left, that he imprinted on you? So there, those three questions. You can choose any part you want. Go.
Well, one, I'm not competent. I don't know how many pieces there are in the collection that remains, let alone whatever he created during his life and what is in the Zappa Trust and so on and so forth. So I know that we took tens of thousands of drawings out of his home. So I can't remember if the figure was 60 grand or 80 large. I mean, it was like, massive. And they're still being digitized so they can be preserved and shared and assembled in animations, because he would draw page by page with these drawings intended for animation. So the number of works, someone else will come much closer than I can. I can't give you a number. The last part, the third question is, one legacy he gave to me was a concern for nature, a concern for diet, food. Since I met him, he started off, he was interested in Adele Davis and her ideas about diet. And then he switched to another mentor. It was a German dietitian, a philosopher actually, that had a dietary system. And Bruce pursued that all of his life and investigated on himself and had some theories many people might regard as cockamamie. But it left an impression on me that in many ways, information that Bruce believed in at the time or espoused as concerns for diet have been confirmed by much more recent publications and medical research and so on and so forth. So I take that with me. What was the second question?
Passion.
Oh yeah,
I obviously he has to be passionate to do all the work that he does.
Incredible.
He has to embrace an element that is his own planet, his own universe to make this happen. But do you know why? Do you know the story behind why he was so passionate about it? Or it was just organically?
I
I'm
think
passionate
there's a
about many
hardwiring
things.
thing there. I
Okay.
think there is, because, like his father said, who was an engineer, that the family was gifted. And his uncle, in fact, reputed to have a photographic memory. Bruce inherited some of that, I think. And I think that he's born with that. The other part was, though, that it was stimulated by film. And for positive and negative, he was very passionate about what he thought was a success and what was a pitiful failure to be regarded with disdain. Even lighting, he would complain about, oh, hey, the lighting, and recalling it. Also, the idea is he was disturbed by certain kinds of violence, which may come surprise to people who witnessed some of his battles that he had, and scenes that he animated. But he thought there was some things appropriate and inappropriate, and that went for Zappa stuff too. He thought, things should be limited to certain age adults, and the kids had no part seeing some of this stuff. But the passion was one insight into that is the just astonishing. I don't not unprecedented maybe, but just very few people have the tenacity that this guy did. I mean, to sit there, I say, year after year, at a desk in his own little tiny studio, whatever he could make, manipulating these figures, writing his stories out, drawing with such little. I mean, he even put it to me once. I mean, he says, "Have you ever known anybody that's worked this hard?" No, not in anything. Because typically a human wants to have a pat on the back. He wants a paycheck or what have you. And Bruce was pretty isolated a lot of the time. A lot of the time when he was younger anyway, just working on his own. And he just loved movies, I think. Because if he really liked a movie, he would say it was a movie. That was sufficient for him to say,
it was a movie.
Yeah, that's real. The other stuff could be junk, but he might even dismiss something. Hey, look, I like movies, Anyway, I wish I could address it. I just don't. With a guy like him, it's like Beethoven or something. I mean, I don't know. It's a kind of genius. I use that word really shy of it because it's overused. But the Romantic era notion of genius was to express oneself, this great dimension in the universe. Well, he didn't need a philosophy like that. It just had to come out of him. Forgive me, viewers. I had a jazz instructor who described the best players as bowel movement players. Sorry. You can edit that later. It wasn't like something you had a choice over, really. It was, it was organic to you, literally. And, that was Bruce. I don't know what else he could have done. I don't. He tried sweeping floors in a I think it was a Safeway or something for a couple of days.
I know. Well,
I'm sure he had ideas interrupting him while I was trying to do. He just couldn't turn them off. When we were young, I was living with my parents, and Bruce would drop by, go down in the basement where I had my room, and my dad would say, "Yeah, Bruce is downstairs." Well, how do you know? Well, I can hear him laughing because Bruce would go into my bedroom, turn off the lights, put on music, and then the music would give him images. So he would see movies in his noggin with the lights off. And,
I think that when you are so deep, the introspection, that journey within yourself, you create lots of things. I don't know why. I actually relate to that. This is not my story, but 80% deaf, not able to hear growing up until I was 8. I was isolated. And so I created a massive numbers of stories and scenarios in my own head. So for me, it's easy to picture it as to what happened, like in his mind, listening to music or having that space where there's no interruptions, and it's just how do you contain that? But that's what happens when you're just on your own, and then not only at one time but frequently. And so in my head, that is easy thing for me to picture, but I don't know how everyone else is translating this at this moment.
Yeah, I should add that he was also in the Marines.
Whoa.
And so it wasn't totally alone. He was in Vietnam. And about the inward world, he'd report his dreams to me, which, got tedious to me because he would go on and on and on about these stories he had. Hey, listen, I had this dream last night. And then he'd unfold this story. And I just have snaps that are just unrelated bits, but he would actually have, some kind of story happening in that noggin, and he'd report it, So like I say, he couldn't turn it off.
Well, I guess it was good for all of us, right? I mean, he created beautiful pieces, beautiful work. People can see back the work that he did. So it's wonderful that we're able to see evidence of what was happening in his head.
I hope they can edit my interruptions out, but he paid a price. Serious dues. Yeah, but anyway.
No, and what all I'm saying is that we able to see his talent now today, and there's evidence of what he left behind, and we can see glimpses of what he was in his mind. Now, pain, like anything in life, a reaction has a reaction. So I know that we only got like 4 minutes away,
Yeah.
so I don't know if you want to go there or you want to wrap it up in more of a any last thoughts about him?
Well, I miss him every day, I think, He's a roaring silence
Hmm.
because I talk to him so often, and, he was a very dear, close friend, and, he'll never. At least I hear his voice in my head. So he's given me to that. Voices in my head. Thanks, Bruce. But, I imitate him all the time with my friends that in our little club as best I can, because that helps keep him alive for me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, it seems like, and I can tell that there was a close friends to you, and that I can see how you were, you admire his work, and especially the number of hours that he would spend doing this. So I appreciate you taking the opportunity to share a little bit more about him. And then how would people be able to find his work?
mm,
There's like anything on YouTube and
yeah,
internet. Do
yeah.
you
They're
name one of his movies?
well, if they know anything about Frank Zappa, they can see animation. Baby Snakes was a movie that Frank issued that
Okay.
Bruce has a lot of his animation in that. There's other, I think there's probably fans of Inca Roads, uh, a piece by Frank that Bruce has animation, and some of my colleagues will have a better recollection. I should say that Bruce's talent was astonishing. Of course, it was sui generis. I mean, you won't see anything like that anywhere else. But it's the man I miss.
Yeah. Yeah. When you love someone, it's not only one area or two, it's all of it. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, stay tuned. Maybe, if we don't know yet, having more opportunities to share about who he is or who he was. I don't even know. I'm always intertwining those two, who he
Yeah, well,
is, who he was. I mean,
sure.
he is
Well,
still present. So,
yes, yes. Well, his stuff will be coming out, and there's a video still available, that our friends will tell you about.
mhm. Yeah.
Um, if you need any more yakking, I got all kinds of insights into the family and the areas he loved walking through Geyser Park. I mean, he just had his love of nature was. Well, I'll just add for your sake an anecdote. When I first met him, he came to a club I was working at. I was a musician, still am, and I was playing. And he came to help another friend take stills of us. Anyway, my first encounter is he's climbing up, shimming up a metal light post. It was right off. This club was right off I-5 on the Stewart Street exit in Seattle. Still, the building is now El Corazon. At the time, it was the gallery. Anyway, so here he is, and my friend took a picture of him. I might have that photo, or someone might. But anyway, he loved climbing all his life,
Hmm.
climbing trees and climbing up theaters downtown, where if one fell,
Oh, no.
one would, yeah, he'd be a goner. So he's up there, 3, 4 stories up, and so that was, again, you think organic, or was it the Kent Valley, or both? He prided himself on that.
Well, it's good. Thank you so much for allowing us to share this story with all of us. And we're just excited to continue to have this conversation in many other ways, many different formats. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And John, once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Discover the stories that shape our community with our Highline voices on 106.5 KQWZ LPFM. Each week we bring you history, heritage, art, and culture from people who make the Highline region unique. From community traditions to contemporary voices, we celebrate what connects us all. Tune in and be part of the conversation. our Highline voices right here on 106.5 KQWZ LP FM.